wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the Healthy Family Podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Leah Follett. Welcome to A Quirky Journey. Join us as we share our family's journeys to good health. You'll find plenty of inspiration, tips and recipe ideas, as well as stories from everyday people who've struggled and overcome health problems and diet challenges in their own families. I'm Jo Whitten, author of the blog and book Quirky Cooking, and today I'm here with my friend Fouab Kassab. Hi Fouad.
Hi Jo, how's it going?
Good. We don't have Leah here. We were going to have the three of us together sometime. We still haven't managed it, but she's with us in spirit.
Well, I was really looking forward to today, and I was hoping that Leah would be here because that's how it all started with us. And it would have been fantastic to have her back and have a good catch up with all three of us.
We will do that as soon as we can. Leah's way out of range, living out whoop whoop with no internet. So I have to get it.
Has she moved to 1987 or something? Or
I don't know.
She's still in this time and space?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
She's
fantastic.
in this time and space.
All right, wow.
As far as I know, unless she's been messaging me from elsewhere.
Well, who knows? Time is cyclical, Jo. Who knows?
You just never know.
Yep.
But she's enjoying the quieter life, I think.
Great.
On the farm.
That's enviable.
Yeah. So we've been talking about this, haven't we? We're all working on simplifying our lives and quietening things down.
Yeah, for sure.
It's always something that we have to work on in this day and age. But we thought we'd have a bit of a catch up, and Fouad will give you a bit of his story, and then we're going to be talking about what to do when you've done GAPS and you've done Paleo, and where do you go from there, and is it something that is a long-term thing or a short-term thing, and how do you know what to do, and when do you bring foods back in, and that kind of thing. So we'll see how we go. We could be here all night, couldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. Jo and I have been talking. Well, can we cut this? Is it something that can be edited, Jo? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, Jo, you and I have been talking for around 25 minutes before this conversation started. So, I think
we tried to get some of it out of our system first.
Yeah, we're trying not to stay here for 6 hours tonight, so we'll try to keep it brief and focus on the topic. But there's so much to catch up on.
And we're both as bad as each other with talking a lot, so...
Yes, I come from a family of raconteurs. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they all told stories and wrote poetry and things like that. So
same with mine.
You're going to have to stop me from talking.
Yeah, mine are just the same. So funny. Oh, well, we should just explain a little bit about how we met and how all this came about, because we were going to be doing this podcast with the three of us. But we didn't manage to get hold of Fouad because he went and started a restaurant. So,
as you do.
As you do.
Yeah.
So, managed to get him back now. So, no.
Do I sound more relaxed now, Jo?
You sound so much more relaxed.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
I feel it. I feel good. I'm feeling great.
Good. That's good. You've had your restaurant time and you're ready to have a break.
Yeah, that's good.
No, well, what we were saying before... we were trying to remember when we first met, and I think we figured out about 5 years ago or so.
Yeah, 2010 was our first contact.
Yeah, so Fouad was this amazing food blogger, and I was a beginner food blogger. And I would go and drool over all his photos and recipes and just think, oh, I wish I could blog like that.
Yeah, well, now you've done it.
I don't know. My photos are not as good as yours.
You overtook me. You're a world sensation, Jo Whitten.
I still don't have the photos down pat, but that's okay. I'm still using my iPhone.
Well, I'm just a better cook. I think I can just...
my
food looks better. That's what it is. It's all about the subject.
Oh, you're still a smarty pants too.
Well, I am. Yeah. Well, yeah. All right. So I don't know where we want to start. Maybe I'll explain a little bit about the restaurant.
Yeah, do that.
Things in perspective for listeners. So maybe if anyone remembers me from the first podcast, I don't know if we mentioned the restaurant back then.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but to catch everyone up, So I started a restaurant in April 2014
Mm-hmm.
called Chickpea, and that was a restaurant. I think from what I know, it was the first true paleo real foods restaurant in
Yep.
Australia. And I don't. Maybe there were cafes that did that, but a restaurant that did
Fine
paleo real
dining.
food. Yeah, for a dinner experience. I don't think it's been done since even. So
No,
we actually
quite rare.
focused. Yeah, yeah, and even like around the world. And I did that. I started it because I had been on paleo since April 2011, I believe, back then.
Okay.
And I had benefited so much from it. And it just really, really impacted my health and my well-being mentally and physically in such a profound way that I felt that if I were to open up a restaurant, it would be very important for me to actually create something that would bring health to people rather than be one that would be, just commercial. And, I'm not a chef. I don't come from that kind of background. My food thing started with the blog. I started a blog called thefoodblog.com.au back in 2006, which was really, really early on. And then, it was so easy back then, Joe, that I got the domain name The Food Blog.
Yeah, I know. That's just amazing. Thefoodblog.com.au.
So, it really helped with those search engine optimization rankings.
Yeah.
And that, I used that because I'd come from Lebanon. I came in 2001 and I was writing about food because I had done English literature at uni before I did software engineering, and I had this love for writing, and I thought I'd keep it up through the blog. And that was, the blog
You're
was...
very good at it.
Thank you. I love writing. I think that's still, the thing that I enjoy the most after all this journey.
Yeah.
That's been clear to me. But this whole thing... So the blog was the first Lebanese food blog to ever be written. I think it was the first Middle Eastern food blog ever as well.
Well, even there's none like over in Lebanon or...
No.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think, I was... at first, the first to do the blog, the first to do a paleo restaurant in Australia. Not that I'm not bragging about it.
No, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's daunting. Because you kind of like, is this gonna work?
Yeah.
Does anyone even care? So that's the scary bit. But with Chickpea, it went really well. People loved it, and
the food was amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, how could it not be? I mean, it's all real food. We're using grass-fed meats, and we're using all fresh vegetables and real oils, and traditional fats.
You can't go wrong.
No, you can't. And we treated it with the love and respect that the ingredient required of us, and people came, and it was an ethnic cuisine, so it was Lebanese food, Middle Eastern, and that we've got a 5,000-year-old heritage of cooking in that region. So we weren't trying to do anything fancy, but we're trying to cook real food done in a traditional way.
Yep. And
people loved it, and the Good Food Guide nominated us in the top 10 pop-ups for the year, and we called what was it? One of the best pop-ups of the decade by the Sydney Morning, which was amazing.
That's so cool.
And then after I closed that down in November, I was given the opportunity to join Oz Harvest and do another pop-up that supported them. So the space that I was given was a space that they had, and I did a replica of Chickpea and called it Baraka, and Baraka did pretty much what Chickpea did, but on top of that, we were giving a percentage of our takings to Oz Harvest, which awesome. It's an amazing charity. They rescue around 56 tons of food a week.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the number's growing. And we also had some of the youth that they train in the Oz Harvest Kitchen. They have a program where they teach young, underprivileged Australians how to cook.
Oh, that's awesome.
They came through our kitchen, and we helped them and gave them a taste of the real world in the kitchen. And that restaurant just finished up 2 weeks ago. And I've regained consciousness after what seemed like a month-long tsunami.
I bet.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm feeling like, I'm so relaxed now.
Yeah, you sound really laid back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also had I was in Bangkok. When was it? I'm losing track of time, but maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And we left Bangkok. My hotel was right next to the Hindu temple the Hindu shrine that had exploded in it. Basically, like 19 people died and 120 were injured, and it was literally 30 seconds from my hotel.
What happened when you were there?
No, it happened 2 days after I left. And
wow.
I walked past that shrine every day, and I actually went inside a couple of times, and I used to buy my coconut from the street vendor next to it in the morning. And so I came here and I heard that news, and it made me really sad for the people that had to suffer through it, and really grateful for having come back in one piece to my family.
Yeah.
So now, at this stage, I think after a restaurant closed down and, having that experience, not that, I experienced it myself, but it's just, you just feel
still
like,
is a wake-up call, isn't
yeah,
it?
it is, yeah. And then, very little will sort of phase you after that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm feeling relaxed, Joe. How about you? You've been through a GAPS journey over the past...
Yes, yeah.
Come on, let me know.
Nearly a year now. Oh, it is a year. Because
Wow.
when Isaac got really sick, it was last June, July.
Yeah.
And I just head first into GAPS. And then I went, okay, this is more difficult than I realised. I'm going to have to backpedal a little bit. And we went back to Paleo, and then and then on to full GAPS, and then, which is a little bit stricter than Paleo. And then when we had time at home for a whole month in October, then we went intro Paleo. And the differences, I wish you could see, Fouad, I haven't caught up with you for a while, but I wish you could see the difference with Isaac now compared to 12 months ago. It makes me cry when I think of it. He was, 12 months ago, he was just could not cope with anything at all. Schoolwork, showers, changing clothes, feeding himself, nothing. He couldn't cope at all. Now he's got his first job. He's working at the supermarket, and everybody comments on how friendly and outgoing and excited he is about his job, and he just jumps out of the car and runs inside. He just loves it.
Wow.
He's going full blast with his schoolwork, which he couldn't even do school for like 2 months.
Wow.
He's got the
I remember you. Yeah.
You remember.
He was on medication.
He was. And he was doing, now he can solve the Rubik's Cube in 10 seconds. And, he's just like, kaboom.
Yeah. I saw that video.
Yeah, so he's just...
It's one of those things, the Rubik's Cube. I don't know about you, Joe, but whenever I look at it, I go, that's amazing. I will never apply myself to learn this stuff.
Well, that's all it is applying. Because like Isaac says, Mum, I try to make sure people know that I'm not some kind of freak. Anybody can learn this. I'm like, but Zachy, most people don't want to learn pages of algorithms. I know it seems normal to you, but most people don't want to do it.
That's right. That's so cool to see it. And especially knowing Zach as well. Wow, it's amazing.
He's just doing so much better. And it's been actually a really positive experience, the whole GAPS journey. We haven't had any real terrible meltdowns with the kids. They haven't rebelled and run away from home because they hate the food. They've actually really done well. And the one that was the most against doing GAPS was my eldest boy, who's now 16. And he came to me the other day and he said, Mum, I'm really glad we've done GAPS. And he said, this food's really helping me to be really fit and healthy for soccer, because all he wants to be in the world is a soccer player. And he said, I'm so glad we're doing it. And, even when we stop, I'm still going to eat healthy because I want to be fit and I want to be healthy. And so it's been really positive. I think the kids have learnt heaps about food. They've learnt to enjoy foods that they didn't enjoy before. So... gigantic blessings all around here.
So where are you now? What are you eating?
Well, now we're mostly full gaps. So the kids are pretty good with some cheeses, yogurt, butter, ghee, which they didn't have before very much at all.
Yeah.
Simi's a bit like me. He's the eldest boy.
Yes.
He can't handle too much dairy.
Yeah.
I can handle a tiny bit of cheese and a tiny bit of ghee and butter, but not if I go overboard. I generally end up with histamine reactions.
Well, you never used to be able to handle
any. I would
Yeah.
I would get like a flu symptoms if I had butter for 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
But now I'm a little bit better. I wouldn't say I'm ready to go gung-ho with dairy. I don't know if I ever will be. But this is what we've sort of thought was really interesting, that where do you go after a year or two on gaps, and where do you go after a couple of years on paleo? Do you start bringing things back in? And I would actually love it if you would share a bit about your story about why you changed your diet and how it helped, and then how that continued on with when you started to bring some things back in.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm sort of at the stage where, we're sort of halfway through gaps, and you think, well, I guess we'll still continue to improve, hopefully.
Yeah, of course you will.
Yeah, but the kids are starting to ask, well, when can we start bringing this back in, and when can we start bringing that back in? And I'm sort of holding them off at the moment. They're okay, they're fine, they're not freaking out, but they're just curious,
Yes.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. I'll start by saying I don't have all the answers, and I'll just explain my experience and how my view has changed over the years. And I think what happens to someone who goes on a diet that works is like you meeting the love of your life.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
You go, I love everything about it. It's amazing. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel happier. I wake up excited in the morning and all that.
Yeah, I feel so much more alive.
Yeah, which is great. But the similarities end. Like this. You haven't met your soulmate, really. It's what you've done is you've found a diet that actually is fit for purpose for now.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a little bit of background where I've come from. So I come from a Lebanese family, and the reason why that's important is we're very trigger happy when it comes to antibiotics in the Lebanese.
Really?
Yeah, very much so. So like if you get a cold, they put you on antibiotics.
Really?
So, yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like maybe they're changing now, but like they very much over medicate, and I grew up. I was born in 1980, and that was pretty much 3 or 3.5 years after the start of the Civil War. So I was born into war basically, and there was no access to all these amazing fresh ingredients that one would expect of the Mediterranean, and we had a lot of food get sent to us from not just us, it's not like my family, but to the Lebanese in general. There was a lot of foreign aid, which pretty much was those shelf-stable wildflowers and white sugars, and legumes and things like that. So we had a very carb-heavy diet as we grew up, and there's a lot of processed foods. Even though Lebanon was the country of olive oil, the Lebanese also moved to using things like canola and vegetable oils when it came to frying foods. Yeah, it is sad. I mean, we use olive oil for dressing, and we don't cook with it. But if you want to fry anything, they'll fry it in vegetable oils.
Yeah.
And so that was really that. It was just one of those things, one of those factors, or I'll repeat. So that was really some of the factors that affected my growth and my health. And I see photos of myself when I was a young child, and I was overweight from the get-go.
Okay.
And,
living on white flour and white sugar.
And, things like, bottle-fed and it's all that kind of skim milk, but I don't know what they put in it. And we didn't have access to milk, like fresh milk. So milk was all dried milk.
Yeah.
And I remember like growing up, mixing the milk powder with sugar and just eating it as a snack.
You know what? I grew up on that kind of milk too.
Right. Yeah. So that stuff is
because
super
we had no
tasty.
money, so
it is actually delicious. Yeah.
It was. I didn't really like it, and it did bother me right when I was little. I remember not feeling well if I had much.
Yeah, I didn't actually know what feeling well and not feeling well. I didn't have that
I had major reactions to dairy.
Yeah. So for me, my health started deteriorating. Like the early signs were the obesity. And then it was more the like ear infections later on, and which I went on. I used to get these ear infections when I was 12, 13 years old, and I got a lot of antibiotics, injections and pills and things like that. And then when I turned 17, I started getting acne, and that was it was basically I used to get it in my scalp, and then it spread to the rest of my body, and it was really vicious. And I was on antibiotics for many, many years there, and then
but non-stop.
Non-stop.
Wow.
I would go 6 months of the years on antibiotics for me.
Wow.
And I came to Australia, and then there I was also would go to see a doctor, and the doctor would put me on antibiotics, and I'd still get the ear infections, and they'd give me antibiotics for that. So I was like, it was just crazy. Yeah, I stopped myself from swearing. I was just mad.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so you get loaded. So what we know now is that there's significantly more bacteria in and on us. So in our gut and on our skin.
Yep.
Then in terms of cell count, than there are human cells.
Yep.
So the antibiotics created a state of dysbiosis, which is the state where you're no longer in a natural state of biological harmony between your the bacteria that's in and on you. You get an overgrowth of the bad stuff and an undergrowth of the good stuff. You're feeding the bacteria all the sugars and bad oils go into your system, and they cause a state of chronic inflammation. And what happens there is, all this bacteria is actually responsible for our immune system. It's responsible for creating energy and creating vitamins for us. So it's just a whole heap of things that was supposed to be working in my system that stopped working, and I found myself 124 kilos. And
at what age?
So that would have been February 2011. So I was 31 years old then. And I couldn't believe it, because I'd go on a diet, I would lose a little bit of weight, and then after a while I'd slip back into it. Then I would put on the weight and come back with a vengeance, and I felt tired all the time, and I was sleepy. It was just madness, it wasn't the way a human was supposed to feel like, and I felt like envious of everyone around me, because I had all these, people would walk around, if someone had good skin, I'd just go, far out, man, I wish I had that. It was my nose was always blocked, I was just always lethargic, I just didn't have energy for things, and I had my first daughter was on her way, and I was just worried about what kind of father I would be. And I don't know, am I taking too long?
No, this is interesting.
Okay, so from what kind of human I'm going to be, what kind of father am I going to be, what kind of husband am I going to be, all these things were really worrying me, and I'm not I'm not this person who just goes through life without self-examining. I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I found it really difficult to come to terms with the idea of me actually being broken for some reason. Like, so mind you, at the time, like all these things that I told you now, these kind of the awareness of my biological state, these things weren't in my radar. I wasn't educated about them. I didn't know that all these things were true. You know,
you just know that you felt yuck.
Yeah, I felt bad, and I was doing what the doctors were telling me to do. And so it all started with an article that, you know, people who are in the Paleo sphere would remember, because it was quite pivotal. And the name would be quite memorable, even though, like, the guy who wrote the article, I haven't seen him much in media recently, but his name was Gary Taubes, and he was talking about, he had a New York Times article called "Is Sugar Toxic?" And he had written about Dr. Robert Lustig, which people would probably know about.
Yeah.
And he was basically making this argument about how sugar is toxic, and he was supporting Lustig's argument. And he was saying how, like, Lustig has this greatly scientific lecture on YouTube that's attracted more than 1 million viewers. And he's just amazed by the fact that people are actually listening, even though it's so dry and it is so scientific, but people are listening because it, you know, says some truth to them. And he goes into the whole biology of sugar and how sugar affects your body and how it can cause all these states. And at the end of the article, it said Gary Taubes is the author of Good Calories, Bad Calories, and Why We Get Fat and What We Can Do About It. I think that's the name of the book.
Okay.
I can't remember word for word. But I read that. I was like, why we get fat and what we can do about it? Why would you write a book about that? Like, we know why you get fat and what you can do about it. We know it. You know, you get fat because you eat too much. And you don't exercise enough. And that was
what we were always told, wasn't it?
That's what we're told. Now, like someone like you, probably you've never had a weight problem in your life.
No, it's always been the opposite. Trying to get
put it on, and you also know how hard that is. So,
and it's not just it's not just a case of eating more and exercising less.
Yeah, that's right. You can't, even if you reverse it. And so I went and bought the book, and I read it, and it made the argument that the impact of food on your body it cannot be isolated down to the caloric impact. And you have to look at the hormonal impact, because after all, it is hormones that control how your body stores and manages fat. And his argument was, I'll put it very simply, if you eat something that spikes your insulin, your insulin increases in your system, and it does two things. One thing it does is it tells your muscles to burn glycogen, which is the sugar stored in your muscles. That's the form of sugar that gets stored in your muscles. And the second thing it does, well, it does three things. It probably does a lot more, but three main things. So one is the signal to the muscles to burn glycogen, and the other one is a signal for fat cells to store fat, and the third one, it tells the liver to actually take any excess sugar, turn it into fat, and then have that, if it can't store it, and then the fat cells will store that into fat. And the reason why it does that, he argued, was if you ate too much sugar, your body cannot will be hyperglycemic, which means you go into a state where there's an excess of sugar in your bloodstream, which would be poisonous to you. So our body needs to control sugar in a really, really tight band. If it goes up too much, you're hyperglycemic. If it goes down too much, you become hypoglycemic. And so, in effect, it's trying to control the level of acceptable sugar in your bloodstream. So there needs to be some sugar, but it can't be too high or too low. And because we eat a mainly carbohydrate-based diet, and it is only carbohydrates, that's the only macronutrient that does spike insulin production in the pancreas as much, significantly way more than protein. Protein does the a really small extent, but it's the carbohydrates that are responsible for the increase in insulin. And we eat a mainly carbohydrate-based diet because of the food pyramid. That if we ate carbs, we're gonna put on weight because that's pretty much what happens biologically for us. Now, this is definitely a valid idea. Like, there's no doubt that the insulin is a fat storage hormone. Like, we know that's its job, but also that's definitely not the whole picture. There's a lot more to it, but really, it's 80% of the picture, if not more. And for a lot of people, a simple intervention such as switching to a low carbohydrate diet will reverse the chronically elevated insulin levels, and people will be able to lose weight because their fat cells aren't told anymore to hold on to fat as much as they used to be all your life. And so I read that book, and it really resonated. So, and I thought, what, I'm just gonna try it.
Yeah.
Like,
what have I got to lose?
Yeah, I've been following conventional wisdom for so long. I'll see what happens, and I did it, and it
so
was
pretty much went onto a paleo diet, or?
Well, I went on a low carb diet.
Low carb, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he had, but like to me, I wouldn't I'm not I haven't eaten, say, McDonald's probably since 2004. Like, I don't eat that kind of stuff.
No.
I used to be a reviewer for the Sydney Morning Herald Good Food Guide.
Yeah.
So
you ate good food.
I ate good food. That was really my thing. I didn't. I was also really interested, and it was really important to me to eat locally, to support my local community. So, if you look at if you want to eat that way and also eat low carb, you kind of naturally gravitate towards a paleo diet.
Yeah.
And that's what I found myself eating. But paleo is so broad, and that's one thing you get as well. Is I think any move to paleo from a conventional diet will definitely be beneficial to people.
Yeah.
But paleo can be a spectrum as well, and it's a meat and veg and fruit diet and nuts and seeds and that kind of stuff. But it's not prescriptive, so it doesn't tell you how much to eat, because what it says is these are safe foods. And then when people read that you should be low carbing, because that's really where paleo has its biggest success with people who are on a traditional, a SAD diet, standard Australian diet, is when you move them from that kind of diet into paleo. And what happens is you put them on this diet that excludes legumes and breads and pastas and that kind of stuff. So their carbohydrate load automatically goes down. Yeah. And in contrast to a typical diet, it would be a low carb diet. So, but of course, paleo these days, if you look at it, as opposed to how it used to look back in those days, because people are evolving their understanding of it as well, and that's one of those that we want to talk about today. The idea is paleo in its how can I put it? So paleo has expanded and become a little bit more open to certain foods. So it starts off by saying, look, food from the Paleolithic that we have a history of use with is most probably safe, so let's tick it and say, yeah, that's good. And then food that is Neolithic or agrarian, and or food that we have access to today that wasn't available in the Paleolithic, let's approach it with caution and see how let's look at it with a little bit of science, because of course we're an omnivore, and the omnivore's dilemma is the fact that we can put anything down our mouth and we might not feel the immediate impact of it. It might have a chronic effect on us. It takes time to build up, and that's what we need to be able to understand like what foods have a negative long-term impact on us, even though we can put them down our mouth today. In a year's time, is it good for us? Because it takes time for our biology to actually, react to these things.
Yeah.
So now paleo is, is super cool with things like white potatoes. It's super cool with.
Is it?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Sweet potatoes, white rice. Even people, you'll hear anyone like, Mark Sisson or Rob Wolf talk about that. One of my favorite people, he's not a scientist, but he's just an amazing human being. Angelo Coppola from Humans Are Not Broken, or Latest in Paleo was his early podcast. He talks about those concepts of actually, like looking at these things and just seeing how you feel on them.
Yeah, and that's the secret, isn't it? That people get caught up in what someone tells them they must eat.
Yeah,
and don't check what works for them.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point. But also, we are these we are strange creatures, Joe. So what we do is we find something that works for us, and we think somehow that we are that there's a world of change and flux all around us, that the seasons come and go, that there's night and that there's day, and there's hot and there's cold, and there's rough and there's smooth, and things changing all the time, except for us. Yeah. And that we are this only constant in this universe. We are born like this, we will continue to remain constant. So, if you find something that's working for you now, it's going to work for you forever. And that's really the big thing here is, no.
It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't, because like most of us are born kind of healthy, and then we get sick, and then we can get healthy again. And then when we get healthy again, that's the real question. What do you do when you're healthy?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, at the crux of it. So I've taken a lot of time talking, Joe. So go ahead and
ask you some questions.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Well, I just find that interesting because I often talk about this at my classes and seminars, that if you look back 10 years, most likely you eat quite differently from 10 years ago. Most people that I ask that say yes, definitely. And then I'll say, look back 5 years, do you eat differently to how you ate 5 years ago? And most people say, yes, I do. And even 1 year. And for us, it's something that as you work out different things that work better for you, you change it. And you don't have to be set in stone that I must eat this way, this is the best way to eat forever. Especially like with GAPS, I do love about GAPS that you start off very, very simply, and then you add things in little by little, and you can tell what's working for you and what's not because you're adding them in so slowly.
Yeah.
But even so, as your body heals, things that you couldn't handle at the start, you can handle later. And it's constantly changing. It's always and always being aware of how you feel when you eat food, so that you can tell what's working and what's not. And
this is it. Like the goal for us isn't not to feel great. That's a side effect. The goal for us is to be happy. Yeah. And that's a more holistic view. So the one that we will take for a diet is its job is to return us to a state of wellness that allows us then to live in harmony with our biology and what our biology intended. And if that's really how we should think about diets, then anything from paleo to GAPS or anything like that, it should allow for the fact that one day it needs to become obsolete for us. Because at one point in time, that point will come when you are going to want to eat a little bit of chickpeas, or you're going to eat a little bit of rice. Now, if you have this internal dialogue about that is just you're freaking out about eating this stuff. Is this healthy? Is it healthy for you to think that way? Now, I'm not saying go out and eat, bad food. So, what I've seen, and a lot of my friends who take this fully, what they do is they start with a restrictive diet, and then they start getting more and more restrictive.
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, I took that out. Let me see. I felt better, and then let me see what else I can take out.
Because surely I'll feel even better.
Yeah. Well, the idea isn't like the food elimination is fantastic, and then you will definitely feel better if you eliminate things that don't make you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's the same thing as taking a pill, Joe.
It shouldn't be elimination for elimination's sake.
No.
It should be elimination to heal, and then bringing things back in as you've healed.
Aim to get to a place where your immune system and your digestive system is what a human's immune and digestive system should be like.
That you can eat traditional foods without getting sick.
Yeah. And stop eliminating stuff. Stop doing all that kind of stuff. Of course, eliminate the foods that you're reactive to. Yeah. But in the meantime, supplement with probiotics.
Yeah.
Get plenty of sunshine. Now, do all that kind of stuff which will help your immune system to heal over time.
Yes.
And don't get married to the idea that this diet is the goal in itself.
Yes.
Because it's not.
That's right. Yep. So true. And I think that people can get caught up in the culture of a diet.
It's so beautiful. And it's such a beauty. It's a miracle, Joe.
Yeah.
It's like you're you do it. I did paleo, low carb, and I hit the low carb wall. I hit that wall. You've never experienced it, probably. You probably experienced a similar thing in the GAPS die-off.
Okay.
But like you feel terrible.
Yeah.
You feel like you've hit this wall, like you've got this flu and you're exhausted and you're just irritable.
I had that on day 4 of GAPS.
Right. Okay, that's quick, eh? Very quick.
Yeah, 4 or 5. And then it was gone within another couple of days.
Yeah. So the low carb explanation, I'm not a biologist.
GAPS isn't low carb though, so it's probably different.
Yeah, probably. So, but the low carb explanation of what happened to me is we have these things in our cells called mitochondria. Mm-hmm. They're like ancient little creatures that are actually symbiotic within our cells. That they're in every single cell in our body. Mm-hmm. They're not human, but they I think they're close with like bacteria or something like that. But their job is actually to manufacture energy for us.
Okay.
And over a lifetime of eating carbohydrates, from what I understand, they specialize. They sort of breed in a way that becomes specialized in burning carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So their cycle of energy making is one that is dependent on the carbohydrates. We can make energy substrates from most things, from all the macronutrients that we can eat, and fat is one of them. And they're not very good at it because they've been doing the carb thing for so long.
Okay.
What happens is after you've depleted all your sugar source from your muscles and your liver, because that's what your body does, like it keeps glycogen in the liver and in the muscles, and then you're still eating a lot of this food, and there's energy coming into your body, but it's very, very low in carbohydrates. The mitochondria just still don't know how to use that energy. It's not something that they're very good at manufacturing energy from. But then your body upregulates the production of these mitochondria that are very good at burning fat. Then you wake up on that day where your body knows how to burn fat. And the clarity. It's like I would imagine. It's like being colorblind and then given new eyes, and then you can see color. And I was still fat. Is that a politically correct term to use?
Well, you're talking about yourself, so I can't really say.
Yeah. Well, it's not a shame. I'm not trying to shame anyone. I was, and I had a lot of fat on me. And but I felt an energy that seemed boundless to me. It seemed that I had access to this powerhouse within my body that allowed me to just move. and do things and want to do things. And I just felt like I could clean my house and I could, do my books and go for a walk and, chat to people and not feel sleepy at 3 p.m. And I had this mental clarity. I could read books, I could talk. And it's just, I was like, what? Like, it's as if you switched on a different human being with my consciousness, but you upgraded me. And I'm like, gee, wow, this is amazing. And it honestly felt like a miracle. And it was, if you think about it. Yeah. I mean, that's what I went from sickness to recovery. And so then I became very vocal about it. It became very important to my life, that this kind of truth goes out there and people are told about it. And it's still really important to me, even though now, like, my take on it, like, I've kind of changed my view, and I think I'm not as aggressive about it as I used to be, and I'm more open about there being many ways to reach the top of that mountain, but once you're up there, the view might be the same, and so I don't know, it's that kind of power. And then if you couple that with something which I didn't do, but I've seen it in friends of mine who would do something like CrossFit, because they go hand in hand, Paleo and CrossFit. Yeah. So you've taken this person who, typically wasn't very healthy, and they were low on energy, and then you took them out, you gave them a bundle of energy, you surrounded them by a lot of these healthy, glowing, positive people. So what happens is you're with this group of people, you're feeling better than you've ever felt before. You have all these endorphins rushing through your system. You've gone through ordeals with these people, which brings people closer together. And you're feeling on top of the world, and you've got this community of people who feel the same around you. And all of a sudden, like how amazing is that for a human experience? Like, how often do we feel that? Yeah, really, pretty awesome. Yeah, it's really rare that we feel it. It's a chemically induced state. So in a way, you're on this high. I'm not taking away from the experience, because I'm it's amazing. Yeah. But you can see why it's addictive, and you can see why people would sort of take this stance on it as if it becomes a life philosophy for them, and then they hold on to it in a way, because they will fear the change in their life. They will fear losing it if they take something like a more relaxed approach around it. And so they all
crash down around them.
Yes. So I'm not trying to reduce the experience of people to this, but I'm sure there's an element of truth to this. As in any kind of group sport, it brings people together, but especially when you've come from a position where you weren't healthy, and now you are, and now you're doing this, at an age where you're an adult. Like I used to run, no, I never used to run, but I used to, at school they used to make us run, and I hated it. And I actually once asked my friend, who was slightly less heavy than I was, I said to him, I don't know, I must have been like 9 years old, something ridiculous. And I asked him, I said to him, hey man, do you mind if I don't come last this time? Would you let me because it was such a big thing for me. Yeah. Like, I just felt like, I was always last in these things. So imagine me, you take me out of that kind of misery. My skin is now good. Yeah. I don't have acne anymore. I've lost now, since then, 30 kilos. Yeah, wow. And, if I'm in an environment where I'm surrounded by these people, where I'm athletically challenging, people half my age and actually being able to kick ass, how am I going to feel? It's just going to be amazing, Amazing. So, yeah. So, it's great, but also you have to continue to evolve as a human being and see what works and what doesn't work, and you can still have these amazing experiences, but with an open mind, and you can continue to have a better journey if decide that it is all right to eat this because I can handle it. Or like now, for instance, I'm happy to eat potatoes because I'm no longer insulin resistant. Okay. My insulin doesn't spike as high as it used to be. I don't have these chronically elevated insulin levels that always ask my body to store fat, and I can't burn sugar anymore.
So you find when you first started bringing, like white potato back in and maybe a little bit of gluten, do you have any gluten in your diet?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Sometimes?
I try not to.
Okay.
So like gluten for me is definitely, so my philosophy is eat food that is high in nutrition and low in toxicity.
Yes.
That's really where I go.
Okay.
I no longer have that kind of label of paleo.
Yes.
I think
That's a good thing to say, actually. High in nutrition and low in toxicity.
yeah. So the high in nutrition is like calorically. We look at food, how many calories does it have? Not that calories really matter, but what you want to do is, like you want to be reasonable. You don't want to go crazy and eat 8,000 calories a day. It's just, that's not what we do as people.
Yeah.
So eat food, real food, making sure that it's, calorically adequate, that you're getting what you need out of it, and that it's got nutrition in it. It'll give you all the vitamins and minerals that you need. And that there's no toxins in it that will chronically build up and cause issues. Like I've been in India. I went to India for a while. I just came back. So that was I spent 9 days there and then 3 in Bangkok. And they're masters of the tandoor. They make this. The tandoor is this furnace that's built into the ground and. It's got this intense heat in it, and they make parathas and naan breads and things like all these beautiful Indian breads.
Yeah, you just got to try it if you're there, right?
I didn't try it, Joe.
Oh, sorry.
I binged on it.
Oh,
I was like, I'm here. Like I've never been in India, and it's delicious. Like there's no doubt. I'm not denying the fact that these things are amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to do it. Look, I'm still paying for it now.
Oh.
Yeah. So
see, this is one thing that I always wonder when I finish GAPS. If I go to Paris, I want to be able to eat some beautiful pastries and fresh croissants, and
wouldn't that
I wonder how much I can handle.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like,
and that's it, isn't it? I suppose you have to be very careful adding things back in. And like you said, with the toxicity thing, you're going to look for the healthiest options and have them very rarely if it's something that can,
I think the dose is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like I probably could have eaten a naan bread every 2-3 days, and I might have been okay.
Yeah.
But we went to this place that, it's probably one of the best meals of my life. It was amazing. Like these are people who mastered an art form that, is thousands of years old. And to me, fire, like real fire and smoke.
Yeah.
That's really the way I think about it is as cavemen, when we started cooking stuff, the first flavoring that we added to food when we cooked it was smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it talks to us at a primal level. So it's really hard to fight.
That must be why I love bacon so much.
Well, yeah, sure. Bacon goes through a reaction called the Maillard reaction, which is similar to the caramelization of sugar. But it's sort of like caramelization of proteins, which it increases all these flavor compounds in it. But also, unless your bacon is good quality, I'm sure yours is.
It is.
It
even is made like 5 minutes from where I live.
Do they put sugar in it? A little bit.
I can't remember.
They probably do a little bit, and then you'll do the bacon and you cook it, and the sugars will caramelize and the proteins will caramelize, and it's sugar and fat and it tastes great, but it's not too much sugar, so you don't worry about it, and you're okay. So but that's great.
It's just, but the thing that I come back to is, okay, just say you get to the end of GAPS, or you've done paleo for a few years and you start to bring some things in, just a little and just carefully and always being aware of health and all that kind of thing. It's still real food, it's not rubbish.
Yes.
If you do crash and burn, feel awful like you said you did,
yeah.
you know how to get back on track.
Yeah.
And you know, next time, okay, have a little bit less of that. It's not like you're back to square one again.
Never.
Which is very comforting, because this is the thing that my kids were very scared about. They were like, but Mum, if we do gaps, what's going to happen when we finish gaps and we start, what if we go and have some homemade spelt bread and we have to start gaps over all again? I'm like, no, doesn't work like that. It's okay.
No, it doesn't. No.
You know, as you heal your body, you'll be able to handle a little bit of other things, and it won't be such a big issue as it is now.
Yeah, well, you know, we're very strong. Like, human body is amazing. It really is. Like, imagine the stuff we throw at it and it still does all right. But yeah, we worry about that. We also worry about our own will and determination, as if, you know. But we have a lot of unreasonable fears. You know, like we kind of we like to set a lot of boundaries with us, because that's kind of been the lack of trust. I think from a psychological perspective, you know, like when parents just don't let kids do stuff because they worry that might, like, the kid might abuse the power that was given to them, you know. So they treat us in a way that, like, it's very kind of limiting, and they're like, don't do this, and why? Because they worry that, hey, you cannot be trusted with the power that's given to you, so you have to learn limits, and because you might just go off the rails, and I think that kind of attitude might be instilled in us because, you know, most of us, because, you know, we're older, you know, the new generation might have a different approach. I know, surely I don't bring my kids up in that way. I trust that, you know, they know what's good. Like, we have an inherent ability of actually knowing what good behavior is. But of course, when it comes to food, it is different because it talks to these pleasure centers. Like, but we are adults, and you know, we have to be able to trust ourselves, and we have to know that, you know, if I eat a baguette today, in a year's time, I wouldn't have eaten 30,000 baguettes. You know, it's not like, you know. First of all, trust that now you have a better gauge, and, like, after having gone through this experience, now you know what wellness feels like.
Yes,
and you know
exactly.
it as an adult, and you know that it is an experience that is available to you, and you know when you're not feeling well.
And you know what to do. You know what
to do. And you do it, and you get better again. And I've put on weight, and I've lost weight again. You know, like but, you know, I never actually went back to being 124 kilos. But I did go down to, I think, 91 kilos. And then I went back up to, say, I think 99 was, again, like what I went to. But that was, you know, periods of big stress in my life.
Yes. That's always a big thing.
Yeah, it is a big thing. So that's, you know, that's, again, one of those things where I mean, we're not a chemical reaction.
No.
We're such complex things, and
so much more to it than just what you eat.
Yeah. Joe, have we gone over time?
Yes, I think we should stop. But that was really interesting. Thank you for that. And I think that will be really helpful, because a lot of people are a bit confused as to what do you do when you finish gaps, or what do you do when you've been on paleo for a few years and you're like, well, do I just stay there forever? And really, obviously, it's up to each person to figure out how long and whether they do stay doing exactly that for years. But I just thought it would be good to hear your viewpoint, because I know that you do eat really healthy, but you're not so bound
labeled
up. In a label, and it's. I think that's the healthy way to be. Once your body can handle other things, it's okay to have them now and then.
It's just, I think we should really cover the thing about, I think we did a little bit, but maybe what we should talk about is, if you're part of a community of people who eat well, and don't fear that if you extend your range beyond what the community thinks is actually acceptable, don't be bound by that. You know, you should do things that work for you. And you should enjoy, you know, life, and don't be restricted by people's expectations or expectations of yourself that are based on just constructs that you've made up in your head. Just base it on what you feel is right for you. And you can figure it out.
It's funny you should say that, because all my blogging life, everything's pretty much been dairy-free with now and then a little bit of butter.
Yeah.
And now my kids are starting to have dairy. And
what do you do?
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is weird. So I'll mention what they're eating, and I'll say with some yogurt or with some camembert cheese, and I'll say, well, I didn't actually have any because I can't handle it, but they did. And I think I don't have to make excuses. It's okay if people want to have dairy.
Yeah,
so it's funny. You're just so used to being known as dairy-free that you've got to stay dairy-free.
Yeah, as if that's like, you know...
the end all and be all.
What? You want to go vote for Tony Abbott now? What? Sorry, we got a little bit political. I hope that's not gonna...
Yeah, watch out. No. Yeah. But I think the thing is, I try to, with my recipes, I do try to make lots of variations because I know there's people on every stage of the journey. Yeah. And so I try to make sure I have dairy-free
it's amazing.
options
Like, really, I don't know where you get the energy and the will and the determination and the kindness that you have.
Well, guys, that's it for our episode of A Quirky Journey. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Fouad, for joining me, and I hope you'll be back.
Thank you, Jo. I'll definitely be back.
Cool. Well, we'd love to hear your feedback, guys. So if you'd like to let us know what you thought, you can leave some comments on my Facebook page. Do you have a Facebook page going at the moment, Fouad?
Well, I do have the restaurant Facebook page, which is facebook.com/barakaau. So
Baraka.
Yes,
yeah?
AU. Yeah.
AU. BRAKA.
BARAKAU.
Thank you. I'm getting tongue-tied.
That's all right.
Okay.
You can visit the food blog.
I
think that really will be my thing.
And
for
so
a while
will you be updating that more now that you have more time?
I'm hoping I will. I've got a lot to talk about, a lot of stuff that
a lot of experiences to share now.
Yeah. I want
new recipes to let us have.
Yeah, for sure. I'll share that bread recipe at some point.
Maybe you should just write a book, Fouad. Just do it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I reckon you should do it.
I'll see how it goes.
We want a cookbook.
Yeah? I might. I've had a few really good ideas for cookbooks, but
I think you should.
Yeah, we'll do it. Let's do it together.
All right, cool.
I
Except your recipes are better than mine, you said. I heard you say that at the start of the podcast.
I am amazing.
Maybe you should just do it.
I'm joking, sure. I'm saying I'm a better stylist than you are. I'll style you both.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you do that. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Check out thefoodblog.com.au. And there's some awesome recipes on there. And we'd love for you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. And also check out thewellnesscouch.com where you can view the entire range of wellness podcasts available. And next week, I should be back with Samantha, who was going to do part 2 of the oils questions, essential oils. She couldn't be with us today, so it should be next week. So stay tuned for that one, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.